this is Matt once again. Welcome back to another video. This is another paid request, this time for Jonathan. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested in requesting any type of videos, topics, reactions, commentaries, what have you, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. And this is for The Great Outdoors in 1988. I have talked about this film once before during the John Candy Marathon, but I've always said I'm very much open to revisiting, redoing videos. Because either A, copyright eventually took them down, or B, I could always do better. I could always be more coherent. And I'm always open to talk about a film again, because for the most part, I love talking about movies, whether I like or dislike them. This I do like, but again, even if I dislike, I'm open to talk about a movie again and again, if people want to request it, that is. But The Great Outdoors, this is one of those films that when I was a kid, I remember seeing a few times. But I would say there's other John Candy films I grew up with more, like Summer Rental is a personal favorite of mine. I wish we could get a Blu-ray of that. Directed by Carl Reiner, got Richard Crenna, and I think Rip Torn. So a lot of people have passed away. I think Summer Rental was a Paramount movie. I could be wrong on that. And still no Blu-ray. Summer Rental, entertaining film. Seems like something like Tino Lorber or Shout Factory, Shout Select. Somebody should do that sometime. We got Summer School on Blu-ray. Let's get Summer Rental on Blu-ray. It's John Candy. That film deserves it. Like I said, it's my personal favorite. That or Planes, Trains, and Automobiles are my favorite John Candy films. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is the better movie, but Summer Rental have more of a nostalgic charm for me. Oh, you watching the Smurfs, huh? You ever see the episode where Papa Smurf beat the shit out of a guy with a red hat? Did you see that episode? Did you see? But John Candy, this is a guy I did grow up with, and he died way too young. And the sad thing is he died because of his health, because he did not keep track of his health. It wasn't a drug overdose. He wasn't doing any bad, horrible things. For all intents and purposes, everyone said he was the nicest, most generous guy. And of course, those are the guys who die young. The nicest, generous guys. And it's tragic, and you just wished in your mind he could have gotten control of his weight. Because you go throughout his films, like I said, I did not grow up with SCTV, which was, I think, Canada's version of SNL. I didn't grow up with that. I know Rick Moranis and Eugene Levy and a few others were part of that show. He was in early films. Some of the earliest ones I remember seeing and not really caring for it. And I barely remember what the film was. Those films were. I did like him in Stripes. That was very entertaining as Ox. You're leading me, find me shit, I'll do it. As mud wrestling the women. He was very fun in the very end of National Lampoon's Vacation as a security guard at the amusement park. He played off well with Chevy Chase. Going Berserk was a film he did I could never get into. But then you had, like I said, Summer Rental was a lot of fun. He'd worked with John Hughes more and more, because John Hughes wrote this film. He didn't direct it, but he wrote it. And funny enough, John Candy and Dan Aykroyd did appear as these characters before at the very end of the film She's Having a Baby, which John Hughes did. Might have come out the same year, but of course he had Planes, Trains, and Automobiles before that, which is a classic. But you know, John Hughes worked with John Candy quite a bit, and like I said, he directed Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Had both Dan Aykroyd and John Candy in this film make cameos in John Hughes' directed previous film She's Having a Baby. And then after this, would direct Uncle Buck, would help write Home Alone, which John Candy had a cameo in. I think he helped write one or two others. Can't remember. But yeah, John Hughes had a hand in writing this. And before I go on that, John Candy, like I said, he just seemed like such a nice, sweet guy. And like I said, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is one of the funniest films I've seen. Love that movie. Very sweet, too. I like Spaceballs. John Candy, the cast. That's not my favorite role of his because I don't find his role funny. I'm glad to see him in there, and there's a few bits here and there I could chuckle at, but the half man, half dog I thought was more unfunny, goofy. I kind of wish he was in that. I know it's supposed to be the Wookiee Chewbacca type, but I kind of wish. I don't know. As much as I like Bill Pullman, I think it would have been interesting if he was Lone Star. Although I like Bill Pullman in it. But if John Danny was Lone Star and John Danny had the fight with Rick Moranis, I think that would have been even funnier and more entertaining. But I still like Spaceballs. This is entertaining. I like Uncle Buck. But then his last bits of career, other than Cool Runnings, that's a fun movie, was not a fan of Canadian Bacon. And then Wagons East, a Western that he should never have done. This guy's overweight. He's not in the best of health. It's out there in the damn desert, pretty much, in the hot heat, humidity, sweat and everything, riding a horse. That's going to affect your body so much, and then ultimately that helped. It's not the only reason, but it was helped him pass away. And just way too young. And then the most weirdly ironic way, Chris Farley, at the last film he completed, I think it was Almost Heroes, another comedy western. And neither one of them are that good. I would say Almost Heroes was better, but Wagons East is one of John Candy's worst. It just go off a tangent on that. But John Candy, very sweet guy, and he helps make this film a lot of fun to watch. I could really feel for John Candy's character have to deal with Dan Aykroyd's character. Now, Dan Aykroyd's a guy I do like. He's not a favorite of mine, but I do like him. Whether it be Nothing But Trouble or Ghostbusters, among others. Apparently, there's a few people in talks of doing this. I think one was Bill Murray, but this is kind of when Bill Murray had a bit of a sabbatical, because he wasn't really doing any movies until Scrooge, which was also 88. But from like 84 to 88, other than a cameo in Little Shop of Horrors, Bill Murray was nowhere to be found. There was talks of Chevy Chase, but I think Chevy Chase was doing another movie at that point. And I think John Candy had worked with Dan Aykroyd in something, and I forget what it was. I'm trying to remember what him and Dan Aykroyd would have done. I'm sure it'll pop in my head at some point. But he said, hey, why don't we get Dan Aykroyd? Why don't we get him? Okay, yeah, sure. Try out Dan Aykroyd. Why can't I remember John Candy and Dan Aykroyd? I'm sure I'll think of it before people mention the comments. So he got cast. And, I mean, the point of it is he's not playing a likable character. Would it have been funnier if it was Bill Murray or Chevy Chase? I do think so. I think that would have been more interesting, especially if it was Bill Murray. Because it'd be kind of a reverse of Stripes, where now John Candy is the lead and Bill Murray. But, as I said, Chevy Chase, that also would have been interesting, because it'd be reverse of the Indian National Blues Vacation, but they got Dan Aykroyd, and he was fine. The guy who did direct this and John Hughes just wrote it was Howard Deutsch. Howie Deutsch, he would go on to do, what was the John Hughes film? I think he had done, I want to say, was it Pretty in Pink? I want to say it was Pretty in Pink. And I'm trying to remember what else. I think he had done 2 other films with John Hughes, and this was the last collaboration they had. And he would do Grumpier Old Men and The Odd Couple 2 and The Replacements with Keanu Reeves. All films I do enjoy and had fun with. I mean, he may not be the most visual director, but he's made a couple films I found entertaining. Oh, real quickly, another John Candy film I do enjoy is Armed and Dangerous. That was around this time, and I thought that was a fun one. But you also have Annette Bening, like in a very, this might have been her first role as Dan Aykroyd's wife. But it was like 10 minutes in or so, I haven't even gotten to the plot. The plot's very simple. John Candy, his wife, and his two boys go up to the cabin, and they don't have a vacation out there in the great outdoors. I always remember the opening. When I say I didn't grow up with it, I mean, I did see it as a kid, but I didn't see it a ton. I saw it a handful of times. Like, there's other ones I saw more John Candy-wise among other different types of comedy. But I always remember the opening with "Yaddy yat, don't talk back," and the sing-along. So they get there, they're trying to figure out what they're going to do next. And very soon after, Dan Aykroyd's family arrives, unannounced, and I believe Annette Bening is related to John Candy's wife in the movie. And that family has these two girls who are supposed to be very, people are always creeped out by them because they don't say much of anything. And pretty much is, as a story, is very loose. It's just a series of events that happen for like 90 some minutes. It's a pretty short film. It doesn't overstay its welcome. I mean, like I said, there's not really a story other than here's a bit with Waterstein. Here's a bit where John Candy tells a scary bear story. Here's a bit where John Candy and his youngest son go see the bears, and two bears get on the car, and they won't get out. There's a bit where John Candy tries to do the old 96er, this 96-ounce steak. And if he finishes, everyone eats for free. I mean, it's just kind of a series of little events that happen. You edit them together. And then you get like a little story at the end where some kids are in danger and one has to save them and the other gets mano-a-mano with a bear, and that leads into some hijinks. So maybe some people, especially critics at the time, they were less than thrilled with the movie, but when it got on video, it definitely got a good cult following. And that cover is great. Like, that cover, there's like a fishing magazine. It's a great cover for the film. It did get a Blu-ray, I believe, but there's really not much of any features. That seemed like a film, because you say The Great Outdoors, people remember the film, that it would get at least some kind of special edition, but what can you say? Like, obviously John Candy's passed away, but Dan Aykroyd and other people can talk about the film, people who played the family members. And what makes the movie for me is it does have a nice old school 80s charm to it. It doesn't go into the typical, which I'm glad it doesn't, the typical, the marriage is falling apart, and this is going to be a culmination of them getting their marriage back together, and they've had an unhappy marital status, and blah blah. Yeah, that would seem the very typical route to take, and they don't, and I'm glad. No, the family liked each other. Like John Candy, or it'd be like all the kids hate the dad, or then the wife isn't happy with her. No. Very early on, you see that they're seen together, and they're going up. No one's being pouty baby or being a bitch tit. John Candy and the wife are having fun and being playful. And the only people they get mad at is the other family that are imposing when they shouldn't be there in the first place. And even then, you don't really get a whole lot of that drama until maybe the third act. So I guess that's the thing. For most of the film, there's not a lot of drama. It's pretty much just harmless comedy. And when it involves John Candy, or John Candy and Aykroyd, that's when it's the best. Whether they see a lake and John Candy sees a lake while Dan Aykroyd sees all the textile mills that could be built upon the lake. Shows how much up his own ass Dan Aykroyd's character is. Or when John came, the way he's explaining the story, the bear's got your hands like Freddy Krueger, and or Dan Aykroyd's like, oh, you don't make hot dogs? You know what they make those out of? Lips and assholes. And then Johnny's like, yeah. John Candy goes, ha. Well, I guess I'm old fashioned. I love lips and assholes, ha. He's ready to brain. Which, as an audience member, you want him to brain Dan Aykroyd's character. Or you're the water skiing bit with some pretty good stunt. I mean, this is a time when you had to do it for real. Nice wide shots to show the stunt work of Steen, and the guy even has his ski on one leg. You have John Candy doing some stuff, but not most of it because it's dangerous. Nowadays, there'd be like CGI backgrounds, or this whole fucking thing would be CGI green screen, or CGI additions. No, you had to do it for real. And it was wide enough so you could see. It's not ruin it by having it up close or poorly edited. And you still add comedy. John Candy's like, I'm dying, I'm dead, oh, I'm dying, I'm dying. And like I said, I'm glad they didn't go in the typical husband and wife having problems or the kids hate them. No, the kids actually like their parents and vice versa. So again, that was nice. Now, there are issues I have with the film. And excuse me while I take a drink. There's maybe... Watch it again. There's maybe 3 issues I have with it. And this is why I would put like Summer Rental above this. For me personally, I would put... Although I know Summer Rental has the big boat race at the end, but I didn't mind it. I thought it was fun enough. But I would put Planes, Trains, and Automobiles above this. I might put Armed and Dangerous above this. That's just me, though. I do enjoy the film, but 3 things that kind of bug me about it. Number 1, why the raccoons that get subtitled? I mean, the music is kind of funny, boom, 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 boom. But I never found that funny. I think the vague memories I have as a kid is I remember that just because it was so weird and so random. Like, why do we have raccoons subtitled about eating the trash? Can I watch the big guy clean up again? Repeating the line Dan Aykroyd said about hot dogs, lips, and assholes. I mean, why is this in the movie? I know there are people that do like that. Let me look over here and make sure. Okay, yeah, I'm still recording. Want to make sure. I know there are people that like that, but I look at it and go, why? Like, I just never found it funny. It seemed as if they edited the final part of the film and they went, oh shit, this is too short of a movie. Because it's like an hour and 30 minutes or so with the credits. It's like, oh shit, I mean, maybe it was in the first draft, but that's something I would love to hear in an interview. Why the subtitle raccoons? See, I did not have any fucking thing with my body, but as soon as I talked about this now, I went, like, my chest is ready to, my heart's ready to explode on my fucking cavity like a fucking chest burster. The gas of bullshit just building up in my tummy to come out of my thorax or wherever the fuck. I think it sucks. I think this fucking raccoon stuff sucks dick and shit. I don't think it was funny. I would just fast forward through the shit. That's one thing I'll mention. The music, I do think for the most part is fairly appropriate. So I think the score, the composer did a fairly decent job with it. So the second issue after the raccoon stuff is they try to force in this bit with a teen romance that the older son of John Candy's character and this local girl in this town. It goes absolutely fucking nowhere. Like, I don't know a single person on Earth that ever liked this movie that said, I love that whole bit with the teen going out with the girl. Not one goddamn person. And if you say it, you're lying. Not one goddamn person on Earth says they like that bit. That's another scene you just fast forward through. And there's no disrespect to the actors, but there's nothing to their characters. It's just he hits on a girl, the girl tells him to piss off. He hits on the girl again. Okay, cool. He's going to go out with the girl, but he's got to stay there. And I'm like, kid, you could leave any time. This is when John Candy's doing the 96-ounce steak. Just go to the mom and say, hey, this is girl I need to talk to. He's just eating a steak. You don't need me here. Like, it wouldn't be that big of a fucking deal, dude. Just ask your mom about it. For fuck's sake. But then he gets there late and she's pissed because, oh, you're like all city boys. You just left me and you didn't blah, blah, blah. Who gives a shit? No one gives a shit. Don't give a shit about your issues, your problems, your fidelities or infidelities. I don't give a fuck. Go back to John Candy and even Dan Aykroyd and such. Fuck the raccoons. Fuck the teen romance. It's like, well, it's John Hughes and he directed Breakfast Club and directed Weird Science and directed Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and I don't know if he directed She's Having a Baby. I thought he did. I know he did Planes, Trains, Automobiles. I think he did She's Having a Baby. But usually he does this stuff about teen and romance or teen and it has something to do with the teens. No, you don't. You didn't do it in Planes, Trains, Automobiles. It worked out well. You didn't need it in this. If you edited that shit out, it would be a better movie. That should be an edit. Edit out all the scenes between the teen kid. I mean, yeah, you'd be weirding why he keeps looking at his watch, but he could just say, that should just chalk it up to, when is this going to fucking end? Again, that's a scene where the music is very appropriate, where John Candy is trying to bite all this stuff. Boom, 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 dun, 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 dun. And that's what I was saying before, is that it's a series of kind of skits fit together for 90 minutes. Here's the water ski skit and bit. Here's the food bit. Here's the bat bit, where the guy needed to get a bat out. That reminded me of Black Sheep, with Chris Farley and David Spade later on, which has a bit where they go into a cabin. Like, all this stuff with the cabin reminded me of Great Outdoors. I would probably say I like Black Sheep more than this. Maybe because I thought Chris Farley and David Spade made a better team than John Candy and Dan Aykroyd. But again, Dan Aykroyd, they're not supposed to be a team. And that kind of gets to the third part is, as someone's mowing, I wonder what that noise is. Is that a bear? There's enough bears in this, maybe it would come out of the... But anyway, it ain't a bear. Bear's pissed I'm talking about this because so many fucking bears get used. Which is cool. Like, it's actual bears being used. That's CGI bears. It's actual bears that... How much you can train a bear, I mean... As much as you can, but if they get pissed and they cut your head off, don't matter how much they're trained. They just shit down your fucking exposed throat. Because there ain't nothing there but just a stump. So much for the training. But... like I said, it's a series of bits kind of edited together, and I guess that would depend on how much you enjoy the film or not. And it's like Dan Aykroyd, my third issue is, when you get to the third act, it kind of does seem to come out of nowhere. And that's because, from what I understand, there was a different ending where I guess... And there's a deleted scene on YouTube, actually. There's a deleted scene where the two girls are by the pier, and there's the lake, and the Jaws music pops up, and the girls see, like, this big fish. I guess the ending was supposed to be something about the girls are trying to catch this big fish, and either they get pulled in, or something, or they're in the boat and it gets dragged or something, and then they gotta go save the girls. But I don't know if it's just tested poorly or what happened. So then, I don't know if this is true. This is what I've heard. So then they filmed a bit with the mine. Because it never really established that these two girls, what happens in the film is Dan Aykroyd and John Candy, their family, come to a standstill of, what the fuck are you doing here? We wanted to be here. You keep picking at us. Which I do like that line. I was picking my moment, and John Candy goes, you were picking your nose. But Dan Aykroyd told the sob story to get a check. And then very quickly Annette Bening says a few things, and then quickly Dan Aykroyd changes his mind. I'm like, okay, well that seems a bit... I don't know if I buy Dan Aykroyd's character changes his mind, let alone change his mind that quickly. Other than we gotta get to the ending of the movie. And then he goes in and they leave the two girls out in a car in the rain during a storm. I mean, why would you just leave your two daughters out there in a car during a rainstorm or whatever? Then the two girls leave and they go to the mine. I know they mentioned a mine in the movie, but I don't remember the girls ever thinking, oh my god, a mine would be cool. Or a mine would be interesting. Maybe they had like one brief look, but like no dialogue, because they barely talk until the end. Which sound like you could barely hear their dialogue. And I'm sitting there going, where the fuck is this coming from? But I will see, at least that did lead to a fun pieces of business where Dan Aykroyd helps the girls out, John Candy comes back, thinks he's helping them out, but it's a bear, runs off, and that's where you get Bart the Bear. Bart the Bear, who Sally, I don't think is any longer alive. He did a lot of films. He did The Edge. If you watch the Anthony Hopkins film The Edge, that's the same bear, from what I understand, from this movie. One of the more famous trained bears. He was in quite a few other movies. And there's some pretty crazy shots. Like earlier when John Candy and the kid are looking at these bears and they're climbing on top of the vehicle, it's actually John Candy in the vehicle as he pulls out and slowly drives away. No CGI, no green screen, no anything. I'm like, wow. Like, I'd be curious to hear of any stories of that scene. Or, like, there's a guy when John Candy's by the door and it crashes down, the bear's jumping on the door. There's a real guy under there being squashed by this fucking... How much does a bear weigh? 800 pounds? I mean, pretty... I don't know if it's 800, but maybe that's over the top. But, like, how... much more than a human. At least 400? So maybe... Like, how much would that bear weigh? I guess maybe if I looked it up. I don't know how the hell you wouldn't get injured from that. And you have the bit where John Candy shoots in the ass and makes the bear bald in both ends, because the bear began bald on here, now he's bald over there. And that's definitely a scene that, you know, if you see the film, you do remember that scene. It kind of sticks out. But it's fun in its goofiness. And despite me not liking the raccoon stuff and the teen romance that goes nowhere, the film does have a nice charm to it. Not just because of John Candy, but the rest of the family do find what they need to do. I wouldn't say Dan Aykroyd I found that funny in this. I think like Ghostbusters and other films I found it funnier, and that's why part of me wishes it was Chevy Chase or Bill Murray or someone else maybe in this. But I will say it has kind of a weird, I don't want to say wholesome, but like the way it begins with Yakety Yak, the way it ends with this upbeat song, The way how it's still a fairly short film. I think it's kind of like comfort food. It's summertime, or a film that makes you think of summer. Hey, the great outdoors, pop it in. It's about camping, things of that nature. They can watch it with the family, and while maybe there's some blue stuff here and there, they still have some silly, goofy, slapstick portions, and John Candy as the lead makes it work very well because you definitely feel for the character. At least I did. I was fully behind the character. Like I said, yeah, it would have been nice if there was maybe a stronger story or spine to the story. That certain elements maybe would have been built up more properly, like the whole mine stuff, other than like one brief mention. Take the teen romance out of it. Aspects here and there, but overall, it's still a fun, charming bit of a movie. So, it's still a nice reminder of what John Candy was capable of in the lead. I don't know if the film did that well when it came out. Some places say, I think it made like $40 million, but I don't know how much it cost. Some people say it was a hit, some people say it wasn't a hit. I don't know. But yeah, people forget John Hughes just how big his films were, whether directing like, what was the 16 Candles or Breakfast Club or Planes, Trains, Automobiles. Even writing, like National Lampoon's Vacation or Christmas Vacation or Home Alone after this. Weird Science he directed. Ferris Bueller's Day Off he directed. He had a fairly successful streak. And that's why it still boggles my mind that after Curly Sue, he just quit. I'm like, dude, if you really looked at the tally, you've had more hits than flops. Even if you just want to look at directing, let alone writing and directing, you've had more hits than flops. I mean, I think you helped write Dutch, and that didn't do well. But on the flip side, Home Alone 2 did well. Home Alone 1 did very, very well. Even again, directing-wise, most of your films did well. Like I said, after Curly Sue, he just quit, and there has to be more to the story of that than just it bombed. Either he lost a desire, or something. Maybe something happened personally. I know someone once said that he doesn't know how to write teens. Well, he didn't have to write teens. I mean, again, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is, to me, one of his best films, and just it makes me wish we could have seen that Bartholomew versus Neff movie. Or hell, that would have been funny. Sylvester Stallone as the Dan Aykroyd character in this. And have more of them and less of the teen romance and the raccoons. Like, this could have been Bartholomew versus Neff. Like, really, this could have been that. And Stallone do Rambo 3 in this movie. He does Rambo 3, then he does this movie to take a break from all the action stuff. And that would have been cool to see. Okay, that's my choice. Dan Aykroyd's fine, but Stallone, that would have been pretty cool, pretty fun. And add more of them interacting with each other. Because that's the thing now that I think about what's weird about it, is that there's not a ton of... I mean, there's moments where they interact with each other, but not as many as you would think. Like, Dan Aykroyd's there, but it's like, again, he's with the others, driving the boat, John Candy's water skiing. But there's not a whole lot of... think of other movies where there's a comedy team. They weren't really a team in it. I mean, that's the whole point, but I don't know how else. I'm just rambling. It's gone on for like 35 minutes, way too long. So, overall, I don't know how else to word, so I'll just stop it. Thanks for watching, take care, and we will see you guys later. Bye-bye. Still a fun movie. Later.